presentation, what I'm about to show you, some of this is experimental stuff, and I had some demos, and I was playing with them this morning, and I realized I broke some demos, and I started to get very stressed out, and I fixed the demo. So, in the end, let's see what happens. I'll show you some demos, and basically, what I do at Mozilla is I work on standards. So, I attend a lot of W3C meetings. W3C is the World Wide Web Consortium. I worked on ECMAScript issues as well. I work basically with a lot of other browser vendors. So I work with the Microsoft guys, the Opera guys. So I actually know a lot of engineers from different browsers, and we work on the web platform. So that's maybe one of the talks that I want to give to all of you as web developers, and I want to show you some things that we're working on. That's not quite in Firefox 3, but we released in Firefox 3.1 and stuff like that, as well as discuss standards in general and discuss. Yes, however, what's interesting is I got asked a question about sneak peeks. There's no real such thing as sneak peeks because, there's nothing to sneak up on. Everything is in open. And by the way, if it's okay, I'll put the microphone.
So first let me just, has intimidated or intimidated? That's a very good question. Straightforward question. I used to work for Netscape in the early stages of the Mozilla project. And when I was working before Mozilla on I don't know, how many of you know Netscape community of 4.x? Yeah. Okay, so you can blame me for some of the bad code. After a while, there were a very small group of engineers left working on it. But anyway, during those times when we would attend standards meetings, it was very common for Netscape and Microsoft engineers to rag each other. So every time we released a Netscape browser, they would send us a cake in the shape of an eye, like it would be a perfect blue E. And when we deconstructed these, so when we looked at some of their early code back in the day, there'd be something written in the comments like Netscape engineers are weenies or something. So I mean, it was fun. Of course, just going back to the story a little bit, you know that Netscape did not actually win in the browser wars at that time. There was an out-of-court settlement or court case, and the Mozilla Foundation was spun off from AOL with $2 million to start with. A bit of a dog and pony show. And Firefox came around 2004. And the launch of Firefox made the IE team come back to work. Because for many years they did not touch the IE5 browser. So if you remember, for those of you that, did anybody do web development before 2004? A few hands. Before 2004, the IE browser did not change. It was 2004 that made the IE browser change. So IE 5.5 Service Pack 2, I think it was IE 6. Did not change for a large number of years. They'd given up on the browser to work on other things, including this stuff. So the launch of Firefox actually brought the IE team back to work. And some people ask us, well, what about Chrome? What about Google Chrome? The fact that there is yet another browser in the market is validation for the web as a platform. That is, the biggest company in the browser market did not do any work for about 2 to 3, 4 years, actually, if you think about it. And now there's so much activity in the browser world that the biggest web company has jumped in with their own browser. So that, in a way, is a validation of the mission of the web platform. So speaking about Mozilla, as I said, it started with $2 million and then ran, and now it is what it is. It's got a thriving community of volunteers, community members interested in localization, interested in web development. Let me just share a little bit about what Mozilla is from our perspective. Basically, we're a global effort to promote choice and innovation on the internet. You shouldn't just be looking at your website in one browser. You shouldn't be locked into Windows. The browser shouldn't be your ticket to lock you into an operating system. The web is the web. It should work on multiple things. Of course, our philosophy is that the browser should be open source. So we're foremost an advocate for users on the web. We take that quite seriously. We take user feedback pretty seriously. We think about security pretty seriously. In fact, the open source code base has helped us fix security bugs much more rapidly because they get reported to an open source bug database. We can determine that these bugs should be marked security, so restricted to people look at it, and we try and issue a patch very, very quickly. So we have thousands of contributors like you, interested in different things, not just code, not just writing C and C++ or JavaScript, but anything, testing or writing a localization in Hindi, which was done by volunteers. or testing to see, which is very important to me personally, is to see that some of the top Indian websites work in Firefox. And that includes font pack issues. And we can discuss that a little bit later, but there is a Telugu site that has locked users into IE because they haven't released the Telugu font in the in TrueType font, which is a web font format. So yeah, we make Firefox, we make Thunderbird, but most importantly, we're a platform for you to make other applications. So for those of you that have learned a little bit about the platform, learned a little bit about the tool or XML user interface language, using a combination of JavaScript and XML is possible to make applications that look a lot like Windows applications that live on your desktop. So we're also that platform. So Mozilla wants to be both a platform for applications as well as your web browser. And in fact, the web browser has now become the most interesting platform for applications there is. Maybe about 6-7 years ago, I was still interested in getting good Windows applications. Then after a while, people became interested in your Napster and other things. And gradually, things moved to have a network component that was so sophisticated that web applications now also, they have a web component. And some of the most interesting applications are web applications. We're also available in different languages. Hindi and Gujarati should show up on the slide. So I'm going to try and fix that by the time I do the next talk. Because the web is available in Hindi and Gujarati. In fact, let me ask this question. How many of you surf the web and look at content, web content that is not in English on a regular basis? Can you tell me what site is your top favorite?
I really use Gujarati.
Okay. GBP Hindi. Okay, I would actually like to discover those things, and you're able to use Firefox. What is that? Oh, is a Hindi version. Okay.
Google's the most common site.
That's right. GBT, Wikipedia, and Hindi are. Okay, and another question is, how many of you use Firefox with a Chrome that's not in English? In other words, how many of you use a localized version of Firefox? That is, the drop-down box is everything are in a non-Indian language, in a non-English language, not in English. Okay. Now let me switch to talking about what the open web is. And this has been an interesting question. Some people ask me, hey, is Flash a part of the open web? Everybody has it. It's on 99% of desktops. Is Flash a part of the open web? It's a good question. It's a question to which I should have a good answer. So let me start off by saying that the open web is a collection of mostly unencumbered cross-platform interoperable standards. An example of a cross-platform interoperable standard is HTML, at least lately. There was a time when I was working for Netscape when there would be certain tags or elements in HTML that only worked on Microsoft's MS HTML engine. And that was a bit frightening because it meant that the web was becoming intimately tied with Windows. That was probably not a very acceptable direction. But let me just say that HTML now is a cross-platform interoperable standard. How many people use Linux in this room? How many people use Linux on a main basis, like at their main laptop? That's very, very good. I would say there's about 45% of the room uses Linux regularly. Very good. Yes, that's right. So some people ask me why do I use a Mac laptop? And why do I not? That's right.
You don't want to have, as in you want to, every time, even if you want to save the energy.
That's right.
Actually, you go and go over energy. Sometimes the whole menu is
that's right. So I have friends that work on Linux, that work for Red Hat. You can get a $20, like you can walk into a hardware store in the US like Friday and pay $20, which should be approximately what are they? 1,000 rupees. It's still costly, and get Red Hat and install it on your laptop. And you can do that reasonably, but I use Mac because it's an elegant toy, it's an expensive toy, but because Mozilla bought it from me, I wouldn't necessarily do it. But it does run a Unix-like operating system, and it runs it in a fault-free way. But I love Linux, and my machine at home does it. Yeah, it's available on different devices. So the open web which is a collection of interoperable standards, is available on different devices, including this other device, which is doing the rounds where I live, the iPhone. Still a very high-end device, but the open web is available. It's available on Symbian smartphones, so on and so forth. It should be available on different OS configurations. Part of the open web should have open source and free implementation. And that puts a question mark on what is not open. It should also be extensible but in a distributed manner. And there should not be a single vendor login. So I mentioned the days of Internet Explorer. Whatever is in the open web should not lock you into a single vendor, including Firefox. Well, that's a good question. Somebody asked, isn't Opera just a better browser? The provocative question. Could you use Opera on Linux happily? And if so, you should be able to, because the set of standards I'm talking about apply to every browser. So now I take into what is not open by my definition. And I would say that Flash and Adobe are not open. There may be an open source implementation of Flash called Vinash, but fundamentally you still have to buy very expensive tools to do Flash. And I hope that part of my presentation will motivate people who did that killer demo, which I really enjoyed, to do it in things like SVG or Canvas or other things. I would love to propagate those ideas, because those are open web ideas. Of course, I can't say too much stuff about Flash because it's available so ubiquitously on so many devices and configurations, including cell phones. But it's not the open web by my definition, and neither is Silverlight by Microsoft. And I don't think optimizations that work only on one browser, that is, works best on one browser situation, are the open web either. So if there is
a lot of times it's also extra work for the other people, but this is a vendor level. And then you have customizes for every browser that's there on the market. The more the number of browsers, the more the headache it is.
That's right. That's absolutely true. You're about to say.
I don't know completely. How open API is?
Ping, the graphic format. Animated ping. Yeah. So that's a good question. So portable ping has an interesting history. How many people know what PNG is first? Okay. Yes, that's right. Ping or PNG is an image format that has a oldish history. It dates back to the Netscape days, and I believe it stands for Portable Network Graphics. But over the course of time, that acronym has lost all its meaning. Now it simply stands for PNG. Actually stands for Ping Not GIF. So it's a recursive sort of thing. It simply stands for Ping Not GIF. It's an image format. And W3C, how many people actually know what W3C is? World Wide Web Web. That's right. So it is a standard setting organization. So the Ping specification was published on the W3C, on W3C, and became a competitive graphic format for the web. Animated Ping should be equally open, but I'm not sure what the adoption statistics are. But Ping is basically an open format. And that's a very good question because it will help me talk about video. That is my personal passion, to talk about open video on the web. So, by the way, optimization for one browser that only works for Internet Explorer. Yes.
Yeah, it's open the TV thing.
Yes.
So how will you everything link to video?
I
don't really know video, and
I would like to get to that question. I would like to ask you a question on Persuasion. So hold on to that. So by the way, when I'm talking about optimizations for browsers and things that work best in IE, that's not a sustainable situation. And recent indications from Microsoft are really that operating systems don't get progressively better. I still have to see what Windows 7 is. So lock-in to Windows platforms isn't necessarily a healthy or sustainable issue. So if you know a website in India that our QA team is not able to hit, or that the webmaster has a policy where they're like, no, I only support IE or something like that, I really want to know about that. And I want to be able to evangelize them, I want to be able to talk to them.
because it's not for IE.
Perfect.
Only. That's not,
It is.
not for IE.
It has a tag which is not for IE678.
Yeah.
But okay, but see that you do that on a principle discrimination because you want the browser to support the latest version. Yeah.
It is
So
on the side of IE.
oh, I see.
You're on our side. So
That's right.
now that if you go to any of the
Perfect. That is exactly what I mean.
But there are still some web transactions.
Alien I did not.
No, I use that in general, but I said I work for all web transactions.
So I actually
energy does not work on I have to copy the link and then go to ID to be able to use energy.
So, by the way, my email address is Arun, A-R-U-N, @mozilla.com. And I'll project it on the slide as well, so I would like to, if you put on the subject line, square bracket, Mod Camp Delhi, I know it's from one of you and I'll be able to process it. Because of my involvement in W3C and other things, and ECMAScript, I get a lot of email every day, so I need to filter them out. So if you use some filtering mechanism, I'd be pleased to do that. And I also want to talk to you about how to log a Bugzilla bug against an Indian site that's locked out of Firefox. So that at least it's on our radar. See, we were about to say something. I will, this is a good question. So my blog is arunranga.com. And I also do blog.mozilla.com/standard. And you'll notice, much to my own personal embarrassment, that neither has been updated since August. For personal reasons, I commit to updating the blog regularly, and I commit to blog interaction logs regularly. But I took some time off work, again for personal reasons, and something dropped on the radar, including blogging, and I should do blogging. So back to this diagram. This was made by my colleague Chris Walker, and he made it in SCG. And I'll talk a little bit about what scalable vector graphics in SCG is later, and I'll also ask you how many of you have heard of it. But this is sort of a picture-based depiction of what the open web is. So we have the bunch of concentric rectangles representing i6, 7, 8, Firefox, 331, Opera, Safari, and Chrome. And we have this collection of interoperable standards that are coming together. Flash and Silverlight are on the outside. Some things are just part of the web, but slightly on the inside, like Microsoft ActiveX. But things get interesting here when you get to it. How many of you have written Ajax applications? How many of you know what Ajax is? So there are still some hands that are down. Okay. So Ajax is, if you ever use Gmail. How many of you use Gmail? Okay. That's about 100%. If you are looking at the Gmail webpage and you're able to update data dynamically without a fresh page load, sometimes there's some APIs that are going on in JavaScript that are responsible for that. Those APIs are now called XML requests. And Facebook is also on it. That's right. So those things are now universally supported by all browser engines. In fact, they were supported quite early in the game. IE came up with XML Mozilla copied it. It was not really a standard till there was a W3C activity to standard XML request, which was a boring but necessary activity. But now some of the standards behind that have evolved. You now have things like post methods. You have your canvas elements. You have libraries like jQuery. And I think as my talk progresses, I'll show you a little bit more about what you can do with those things. But there's a sweet spot. That is a spot where all the rectangles overlap somewhere in the middle. And that is where the open web is, in my opinion. That is where the lion's share of most of the browsers support most of the standards. And IE8, which I've just tested, has much better CSS support. How many people use cascading style sheets? There's a large number of hands. If you don't know what these standards are, I'll give you demos of some of them, and you can come and talk to me later. But I'm basically talking to what looks like a very, very savvy audience. But IE8 beta has a lot of support, better support for cascading style sheets. But so let's take a look at this diagram. This is probably one of the issues with web development. This is a pie chart showing what percentage you spend doing most things. And there's a very large chunk of time, which the guy who made this diagram says, time spent trying to get the bastard to work in Internet Explorer. And the purple percentage chunk, time spent which is so painful that unduplicated, and more querying. There's a lot of querying involved, because you have to test your browser to see, oh, this works great in Firefox, but my pixels look 7 degrees off in Firefox, or something looks totally askew in Opera. And that's part of the issue of web development, it's part of the pain of web development. And that's part of the pain that standardization seeks to heal. That is, by defining a specification rigorously enough, the browser vendor should not have an excuse to deviate too much. And to the Microsoft team's credit, they've come back to the table, and IE8 is not bad. It supports post methods, which is the latest tendency in Ajax. It supports a few things, but there's a couple of things it won't support still, and that's frustrating. And I don't think they've improved on XP, but it is an outcome, so I'll charitably give them some leeway. So now is the sort of the visual demo part of the prezo. And I think I'm going to show you all the demos, even if some bad stuff happens. So let's see what happens. Okay, so because some of my demos will work fine in Firefox, which is the version of Firefox 3.06, I believe, the latest. But some of them will work better in what's called a nightly build. Can I ask a question? How many of you use a nightly build which is classified as a data from Mozilla? Fewer handful. That's right. That's right. So you can see now what I've got is called MindField. Every time I show you a demo, I'll tell you when it works in Firefox 2, and I'll tell you I'm only using MindField because it's something. I mean, I could switch back. Actually, no. Why not the grandfather? Well, grandfather also is it's more of an internal project.
Actually has a lot of name shifted there. As year passes, MindField, every time there's a new browser comes out, its first name is MindField, right?
That's right.
And as the Mozilla Firefox.
That's right. That's right. So that's where it should be. So MindField is a name given to a generic data that just gets released every night. So I downloaded this about 3 days before I left. So it's, today is February the 10th, right? So it's probably 8 to February the 7th. But anyway, he described our process of getting browsers coordinated. So let's see, what should I start with? I think I'll start with scalable vector graphics. This is all going to work reasonably well. This is going to work for fine in Firefox. So let me start with this picture. Who can tell me, very simple question, what animal is this? Okay. So how many of you have heard of scalable vector graphics, or SVG? Okay. How many of you know what scalable vector graphics is and could give it a name? Okay, good. That gives me an opportunity to educate. So there's one thing. If you've ever run a GIF or a JPEG and really expanded it, what happens? Now I'm going to expand this several times, and it does not pixelate. That's right. So a PDF, and a PNG is a little bit different, but a PSD and a PDF file, depending on what you use, if you use text, is a vector graphics format. So the graphics in it will scale like a vector scale. But what makes scalable vector graphics particularly is that what I'm looking at here is an XML file. That is, the graphics of the tiger is represented. I thought somebody was heckling me. Okay, so this is an XML file. It's not worth necessarily rolling up the sleeve and breaking down the file completely, but the graphics of the tiger, the image of the tiger, is represented in XML, which means that you can use JavaScript methods on the DOM tree. So if I wanted, I could include a script file and manipulate the XML file. If I wanted, I could apply CSS style sheets to that. If I wanted, I could animate it with JavaScript. Because I'm fundamentally, and how many people know that document object model or DOM? So any document can be represented by a document object model. It consists of its parent element. So in the case of this, the SVG is the root. And everything is a child of the SVG. Because there's a beginning SVG and a closed SVG at the end. See? Right here is a closed SVG. So you start off with an open tag for FPGA, just like you would with opening HTML and you close the FPGA. And in between, you have a markup syntax that constitutes image vocabulary. So you have stuff like styles, you have fills, you have stuff like that, and that is what creates the tiger. So this is not a binary format. That's a good question. It is possible to do that, and let's talk about some stuff. I'm glad that person is not me. This is the initialization. Again, if I look at the source of this file, it's markup. It's very elegant. There is a fill, it describes the color, for example. There's something that describes polygon. So a scalable vector graphic is basically an XML file. Now, if I ask you how many people have heard of XML, how many hands? Probably all the hands. That's right. That's right. No, but how many people have not heard of XML? That's not, if you have not heard of XML, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing. Have you heard of HTML? Yes. That's not necessarily a bad thing because, and we can discuss why it's not necessarily a bad thing. But what I'm trying to describe here is that a scalable vector graphic can be used for many interesting applications that allow you to manipulate it as a document, so it has semantic meaning. For example, if you build a map in SVG and you describe what the portion that looks like India is, you can access the India node and manipulate data on the India node when something overlays it. If a new building comes up in Bangalore, for example, you can determine the exact precise location on the map of that and other things. They're not dealing with binary data. Google Maps uses images and XSLT transforms. Not scalable vector. There is scalable vector graphics. Not the satellite. That's right. Were you saying that it uses FPG? I think you are probably right. Here's a bit more an elaborate FPG example, a bit more interesting. These are a mixture of images and FPG, and I'm applying transformation on the images. So I can drag the images around, I can scale or make them bigger, and they overlay nicely. Good question. I'm glad you know about Canvas because that's my next series of demo. But this is using an SVG canvas, and using SVG. Let's look at the source. Let me expand the. Microsoft has not implemented support for SVG, but until recently, Adobe used to provide a plugin for SVG. So I've expanded the source a little bit. This is what I meant when I said that in an XML document, which stands for the extensible markup language, you can put JavaScript and manipulate images, and you can manipulate the document as it is a tree using its document object. So that's how that example is. In fact, we could look at the code, but it's not necessarily instructed because it's a little boring to look at. The HTML5 spec is now being developed being written by one person, with everybody using over it. Nobody is completely happy with it, but nobody is completely unhappy with it. So it's a bit of a statement. But that's an interesting historical question. Anyway, back to video and SVG. You can see here that there's a mixture of SVG in this code. Let me make it a bit bigger. There's a mixture of SVG, JavaScript. Here's the SVG with the rectangular path. And here are the transformations. And here's how the mouse move is taking place. On an SVG element. The SVG element has the video object inside it. So I'm looking at an SVG canvas with video inside it. So now I'm melding different standards. I could also do this with text. So let's take a look at, since video is particularly interesting to everybody, let's take a look at another example. I think this one. No. Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay, so that was a canvas. This one was the transformation one. one I'm layering transformations on top of the video. So if I play this video and I click, every time I hover I want the video to be blurred. So I click blur. Now I'm going to hover over the video with the mouse. That's right. Now I'm going to make the colors edge every time I hover. And take my mouse off the screen again. See, there's a difference between hover and I click color. If I hover over the video with the mouse, so here's the mouse, if I hover over the video, it changes color. So, let's take a look at this. No. Take a look at the CSS. Okay? Background black, color white. I have a class called doBlur, which every time I see a hover, it filters to these filters. These are too small. I think filters are defined in CSS 2.1. I could be mistaken. I'm not that familiar with CSS spec. However, there's no JavaScript in this code at all. I'm binding style based on hover events to a video. That's part of the power of the open. That's what I mean by there being no wall guard. Which is that anything that you can apply to an HTML document, you can apply to a table vector document, or you can apply to the actual video itself. And that's part of that's part of what we're working on. So I think I'm going to get back to my prezo and then I'll ask everybody to talk to me about their final questions and stuff like that. There are a few other things I want to show you that are also demos, but I want to situate them correctly. So one thing that's emerging out of this, and one thing that's emerging out of my work in ECMAScript and other things as well, is really that for a long time when I went to a computer science conference or I went to talk at any kind of computer type conference, JavaScript was seen as a toy language. So like, yeah, JavaScript, what is JavaScript? It's used to make hovers in web pages, or you can make a button work in a web form. That's right, simple DOM manipulation. But the truth really is that as JavaScript advances, it becomes a real, it's not just a toy. You can write real 2-scale applications with that. Part of the joy of that, though, and part of the pain of that, is that you'll pull your hair out because it's a very bizarre language. It doesn't compile, it just runs straight away, it's interpreted. And in order to make it seem less and less like a toy, we have to improve JavaScript performance. And we have to make sure that that there's no memory leaks and stuff like that. So there's performance improvements and there's stuff like that. Also, how many of you use libraries in JavaScript? Can you name a library that you use?
jQuery, JSPJS.
Okay, perfect. So you're familiar with jQuery. Which one? Yeah, prototype. That's right. Okay. So the libraries are quite a lot. jQuery. The guy who works on jQuery actually works for another one. John Reddick. That's right. So a lot of this Prezo I stole from him, and a lot of my jQuery demos I stole from him. Prototype somebody mentioned. The same way. Oh, he would be more than happy to come down here. In fact, I never met. This is a funny story that will reveal a little bit about people's personalities and stuff. I hadn't met John Reddick. I only used to speak with him on IRC. And one day he said, "Okay, I'm going off for some idlis." So I'm like, "Oh wow, idlis. You like idlis?" He goes, "Yeah, I'm going to buy some idli model. M-A-Z-E. How many South Indians in the room? So those that don't know, that's he loves idlis, and he loves to come here. He loves to eat all of these. This may not be a great way for him, but he loves Indian food. So this part of my presentation is also that a little bit, just click backward a little bit. The web used to consist of text and images. Now I can meld them all and make them history. That's ESTIN.